I am, as Ben has said, I'm Director of Urban Laboratory, which is a department at the Bartlett dedicated to cross-disciplinary research and teaching in urbanism at UCL, and soon to launch a new program, the MASC Global Urbanism at UCL East, from next September, linked to the new UCL East Urban Room. So we're very much looking forward to developing engagement and collaboration with Newham and local stakeholders in the future. But I was just going to give a quick overview of some sort of historical context and precedents for this concept of the 15-minute city in 5 minutes. So let me just quickly try to share my screen and speed through a few slides. So hopefully you can see that. I was going to start, as one does, as a reference point with this new book that I've co-edited with a collaborator, Lorenzo Ciccarelli, looking at post-war architecture between Italy and the UK, which starts really with a very interesting chapter by Lorenzo on some of those Anglo-Saxon models that were taken up in Italy, and particularly with reference to the County of London Plan of 1943, which presented London, as you can see in this image, as what was referred to as eggs in a basket, or a sort of idea of organic neighbourhood units that would enable residents to move around in sort of self-sufficient zones structured to provide the basic requirements of an urban population community without having to cross roads with fast traffic. And that sort of idea of London as a city of villages, if you like, was taken up in the post-war decades through the new kind of traffic regulation policy that was brought in by the Ministry of Transport. So again, working with this idea of London being divided up into these discrete environmental areas, as they were called, where you'd have these kind of protected urban neighborhoods with fast flowing traffic moving around the outside. And that was very much the basis for the program of post-war slum clearance that then occurred in London over those decades, bringing forward this radical new vision of urban space and neighborhoods free of traffic. And the images below just show the site of the Brunswick Centre in Holborn, which some or all of you may know, which has been the subject of my research and is the subject of my chapter in this book. And this is an example of this kind of approach being implemented. And you can see the plan on the right showing the two long housing blocks of the Brunswick in black facing each other across a town room or square, again with the idea that traffic around the site would be directed along major roads, leaving this as a sort of discrete, peaceful urban neighborhood in between. And this is another image of the Brunswick today. This space was described as a town room by Patrick Hodgkinson, the architect. And as he says, it drew on Lewis Mumford's idea of the superblock, published in Culture of Cities in 1943, in the context of New York. And again, sort of developed this idea of a precinctual approach to housing development in the city, which has today, with the regeneration of the Brunswick, being reinvented around this sort of idea of a traditional high street. And Hodgkinson himself referred to the Brunswick development as a model for a kind of new village style of development that would be rich with the panoply of life of the West End's villages of old, yet with this new spirit. And one of the things that was really positive about it was its emphasis on open public space, and particularly green space. So it actually returned 75% of open space to the site compared to the 19th century density of housing and backyards. with a mix of housing types and in close proximity to local shopping and all the other sort of local amenities that would be needed around this traffic-free square. And those ideas really came, from Mumford, and prior to that, Clarence Perry in the 1920s, again working in New York with this idea of the neighborhood unit, so across the Atlantic. And then sort of coming forward, we see in the 1980s, Leon Krier bringing sort of resurrecting this idea around sort of principle of the 10-minute walk rule. He framed it as the idea of cities within the city, which again was a sort of interesting response to the problem of traffic in towns. It was very much staking out territory in the city that could be reclaimed from the car, and designing urban neighborhoods around the capabilities of the human body, so the distance that could be comfortably walked 10 minutes to get to all of the
sorry to interrupt,
needed.
Just to say that's 6 minutes now. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So yes, an example of Leon Krier's ideas put into practice is Poundbury in Dorset and Seaside in Florida, and you can also see the influence at King's Cross through the work of Porphyrius, Dimitri Porphyrius, who published this edition of AD. And then just finally finishing up with the Shanghai Master Plan of 2016, where again we see this idea being extrapolated through the concept of the community life circle. So yeah, I'll leave it there and open up to the following speakers.